Trump is a brilliant comedian. Tim Dillon on free speech, Israel, comedy, and more by Piers Morgan.
Just want to come out and say I love the Mossad. I'm not suicidal. I love when the planes I am in land. There's a lot more context. Americans are fat pigs and British people have effed up teeth.
What is Tim Dillon's BMI? Is he part of the problem?
But we're allies. Piers, I've openly supported Hamas. It depends who you're having lunch with. Don't you want to just get through a lunch, Piers? Do you want to fight everyone all the time? A ton of liberals.
I actually want to fight everyone all the time. I don't know what happened to me. I turned 27 years old and I'm a problem. All I see is red.
Who said to me, wait a minute. I feel like I just took acid. I said, why? They go, do I agree with Steve Bannon?
Tim, you have a great friendship with RFK.
He's an authentic guy. He goes, the instant oatmeal has glyphosate in it, and it's actually not healthy. I think we need to invade Steak and Shake with the military and shut it down. I don't think we need half measures in this
Tim Dillon, more like Tim Duncan Donuts.
country. I should be let out of McDonald's at gunpoint.
Tim Dillon is a comedian, a podcaster, and a political commentator.
I actually like Tim Dillon. I think he's pretty funny and insightful.
With some choice words for politicians on both sides of the aisle. He was also in the sequel to Joker, but we couldn't find any mention of that on his website. Dillon's new Netflix special, I'm Your Mother, is streaming now. It was billed by Out.
When can I get a Netflix special? Get some ghostwriters to write some fucking slop for me? I'll get up on stage and dance like the clown I am.
Kick as must-watch offensive comedy that woke losers will hate, which sounds right up my strata. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Tim Dillon now. Tim, great to have you on Uncensored.
It's crazy he's copying me with the whole glasses shtick.
Thank you, Pierce. I appreciate it. I was listening to your last segment about the Mossad. I just want to come out and say I love the Mossad. I'm not suicidal. I love when the planes I am in land, and I'll just continue to a lot of appreciation for that intelligence service and all intelligence services. They're all doing great.
Well, I'm glad we've got that cleared up. I wanted to start actually.
Get it? Because the intelligence agencies just fucking assassinate people? Yeah, that's pretty dope.
With a very aggressive move against you, which is to repeat something you said on Joe Rogan against my countrymen. Let's take a listen.
British people's teeth are gross.
Yeah, brush your fucking teeth.
Is that why?
Yeah.
But they have fucked up teeth.
When people have small jaws, like in your
Yeah,
you see, like,
they
those
eat
aren't-
mushy peas and they have...
It's the seed oils, it's mouth breathing, and it's no fluoride. Now listen, I don't know why fluoride is in the water. Based on my expert analysis, fluoride is good for developing children in terms of dental health. It doesn't really have any effect on adults. Furthermore, in our toothpaste, we don't swallow it. You're not supposed to swallow fluoride. So it gets a bit murky, gets a little strange. Why do we have fluoride in water and in our toothpaste? Why are we swallowing one and not the other? Why are we swallowing anything? That's a little sus. Also, where are the organizations that are regulating the fluoride? Because there's different fluoride recommendations and levels depending on your jurisdiction. So how are we enforcing this? Have we ever thought of that? No? So now I just run the risk of calcifying my third eye and getting skeletal fluoridosis?
Would you like to apologise to the British people for your grotesque insult of our teeth and jaws?
Wait, Piers, let me see your teeth. Can I get a smile, Piers?
Well, sure. I would like to say that was taken out of context.
I mean, they're not the prettiest set of pearly whites.
No, it bloody wasn't.
There's a lot more context. Americans are fat pigs and British people have effed up teeth. But we're allies.
It could never be me. I'm handsome, and I know that because old ladies tell me.
My teeth are immaculate, I'll have you know. Actually,
Your
thanks
teeth
to
are
a
lovely.
Beverly Hills dentist.
That's right. Well, you're like, I feel like you're an honorary American in many ways.
Thank you very much. I feel like one. I've actually lived and worked out here for most of the last 20 years, so I'm very happy.
Bottled water is the move? No, fucking glass water is the move. I'm watermogging. Mountain Valley spring water. Those who know.
To do that. Let's talk about comedy, Tim, generally. There's been a belief by many comedians that you almost can't do too much on Trump because the real Trump is funnier than anything comedians can do in relation to Trump. A,
That's
do you
true.
accept that premise? And B, where do you think comedy is now with Trump?
Ever since I switched to Mountain Valley Water, there's no more microplastics in my ball sack.
Mark II, as he's come back as president.
I think comedy is where it should be, where people are connecting with things that they find funny.
Professional comedians are cope. True schizos only.
Trump is a brilliant comedian. Outside of his political skill, he's an incredibly funny person. And watching him is very entertaining. And I think often the people that try to lampoon him fail so badly because, you know, a lot of the things he does are naturally satirical, whether he intends it or not. I don't think he's always intending it to be funny, but he just kind of says...
Oh my God, is Tim Dillon running defense for the Trump administration? Is Philion full MAGA? Last time I checked in, bro was actually making videos. I thought he was cool.
anything he wants. That's a quality that we don't see in a lot of people, certainly almost in no political figures. And that's what makes him so funny. He's like, you know, if your aunt had a few glasses of wine and she would say anything she wanted.
I think Tim Dillon actually just loves Trump, and I think he's putting on a front and breaking it down for the normies.
And she's hilarious. Is she a comedian? Maybe not a comedian, but she's funnier than a lot of people because she just doesn't care. And I think that's what Trump is. He just doesn't care. Yeah.
Well, he has a very unfiltered, uncensored style. You know, I've known Trump 20 years, and he just says what comes into his head. Sometimes he says it for deliberate effect, and sometimes he just says something because he's just heard it a minute ago, and he thinks it's interesting to repeat it in the public domain, and the world goes crazy or overreacts or underreacts, whatever it may be. But I think you're right. He's a naturally funny guy. But if you're on the liberal woke side, they just refuse to ever laugh at anything he does. And
It's a skill issue.
I always think that they would all be a lot calmer if they just realized a lot of what he does and says
But he's so disgusting, it's impossible to be funny.
is designed specifically to wind them up.
I think
Are taking away women's rights funny to you, Pierce? Get real, pal.
1,000%. What he does to them is when your parents would tell you, I'm sending you to military school. And you would flip out and scream and yell every time they said it. But they knew those were the words that were going to get a reaction out of you. I think he's brilliant in that sense. He knows how to distract. He knows the media. He knows the value of spectacle.
I am very surprised at the direction you have chosen to go. I hope someday you come to your senses and stop this right-wing grift. It's unacceptable that you have an opinion I think is reprehensible. Many such cases. Appreciate you, Cole.
And I think they still, you know, I don't know, 10 years into his, you know, political life, they haven't found a way to effectively counter him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what do you make of the state of the Democrats right now with historic low polling? Joe Biden came out of the crypt yesterday. We have AOC seems to be doing all the running.
Yeah. Okay, Piers. I see you. Put your little comedy hat on, your thinking cap. Came out of the crypt is wild.
To lead the party, which seems to me to be a failure to recognize why they've become so unpopular.
They have to moderate their social positions and actually adopt some of the more populist economic positions of somebody like Bernie Sanders. But it has to be fun. The problem with modern liberalism is that it's not fun. It's actually tiring. It's exhausting. It's a bore. And Trump threw a party. And people enjoyed his rallies. And they thought he was funny. And
Politics are supposed to be boring. It's not supposed to be fun.
And you know, politics is a game of, a lot of it is optics. You know, what does something look like? How does it make you feel? And right now they're struggling to find a message, I think, that resonates with, you know, regular people. Regular people.
I'm the stock default human being. I represent regular people.
Do not want child sex changes. I don't know how that became a linchpin of their, you know, their, like, I don't get it. It's the craziest. I don't understand how some of these positions, like they're immovable, like they won't move on biological men and women's sports, but they will move on health care. They don't even bring that up anymore. So why are these issues that are incredibly divisive,
Chad, who's funnier, Tim Dillon or Trump?
the only issues where they will not give an inch?
Yeah, I completely agree. When you do live shows, do you care that your audience may have pro-Trumpers and virulent anti-Trumpers? Does it factor into your thinking
Why would you care? Ticket sales are ticket sales, baby.
or not?
No, because comedy is about, I think, trying to make everybody laugh. I think there's a lot of absurdity in American life. A lot of it isn't political. I think we should have a strong Democratic Party. I don't want to live in a one-party state. I don't want to live in a theocracy. I look at the Middle East where you have these Petra dictatorships, and I don't want to live in that.
Dude, the Middle East is so based. What are you talking about, Tim?
I want a functioning democratic state. So I think that sometimes calling people out for how absurd they're behaving is actually in the long.
Comedians impersonate Trump to be funny. Interesting meta. That's a good point. Everyone's like, oh, Shane Gillis is the funniest man on this planet Earth. And he just does the Trump impression. Everyone loses their marbles. Listen, his stand-up was funny. Was it the best stand-up I've ever seen? No. Listening to a conversation with my uncles is a lot funnier.
Long run, helping maybe them realize, oh yeah, this is silly. We should not be as ridiculous. And then, you know, that helps everybody. I think you just call out who's behaving in a ridiculous way, you know? I'm against some of the things the Trump people are doing, and I've called that out, you know?
Cat Williams is funnier than Shane, in my opinion. I literally cannot listen to Cat Williams just because of the cadence of his voice. I know that's a very specific thing, but I just can't get behind it. It's grating on my ears. I'm sorry, although I'm not, because apologizing is soy.
Like, I just think it's not, I don't care who's in the audience. I think we all have to recognize the absurd moment that we're in. And it's an insane time to be alive as a human being in any country.
No, it's not. It's the best time to be alive ever, actually.
You have AI coming down the pike. You have the richest guy in the world with a chainsaw screaming and running around. That's wild. We have the president of the country is Donald Trump again, which is wild. All of these things are inherently somewhat funny. They're certainly crazy. And I think I think even diehard Republicans will admit we're living in a time that's pretty insane.
It's just another day of the slop. It's no different than yesterday and tomorrow.
One of the more insane aspects of the last few years has been the rise of cancel culture, which now...
Cancel culture is not real. It's only real if you cultivate an audience of absolute soy boys. People who want to see you fail.
Thankfully seems to be slightly dissipating. It was interesting to me that with your new stand-up show, which came out on Netflix this week.
Jordan Peterson talks about this. Well, I tried to tell Ethan from H3, but he took down my fucking podcast like a bozo clown.
You actually resurrect Frank Underwood. Let's take a look at the clip.
Jesus Christ, Frank, I'll read it. But first, you gotta plug my comedy special.
Oh, Jesus.
It's good. I filmed it in Austin.
I don't care if you filmed it on Mars with Elon Musk. I'm not here to help you.
These photos you gave me, I've posted them all. I'm on the internet. We don't have blackmail, we have content. We're all demons from hell.
You son of a bitch.
Now, A, it was very funny, but secondly, it was very interesting.
I didn't laugh. Funny man is supposed to make me he.
Interesting to me that you used Kevin Spacey to do that. I interviewed Kevin last summer, had a very long and very emotional interview with him. He was very raw, felt very, very beaten down by what had happened to him and was desperate to make a comeback.
What did Spacey do? Didn't he grope some bussy? What gay shit did Kevin Spacey do?
And he's beginning to, and people like you having the courage, frankly, to use him in the way that you did will help with that process. But this is a guy who...
He was acquitted of all charges. He banged boys.
I'm not sure what more he's supposed to have done. He went through a criminal trial and a civil trial, and he was acquitted in both. He's not been convicted.
Does that change it for you, chat? He beat both cases? What are we talking about here? Looks like the tables have turned. Who?
Convicted of any crime, and yet he seems to be completely untouchable by Hollywood. When you came to use him, was part of that a
Did he actually have the Epstein legal team?
deliberate statement by you to say this is absurd, that of course he should be able to work?
Well, that show, House of Cards, was the first hit on Netflix. He's probably the most memorable character that has ever been on any Netflix show, Frank Underwood. Kevin's a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
Like everyone on Earth, he's an imperfect human being.
Can we get a fact check? Did he have OJ's lawyer?
I tend to think that the world is an incredibly complicated place where we need you. It's
Bro's literally running defense for Kevin Spacey.
governed by laws, and we can't have mob vigilante justice, and that's what that whole era of our country felt like. It felt like, you know, kind of a
Dude, that's why I like Tim Dillon. He's so transgressive, bro. He really knows how to like push the envelope of like edgy comedy.
Scarlet Letter thing where you wanted people kind of paraded through the streets and you wanted people to be shamed
Drawn and quartered, hung up by their ball sack.
and banished. I feel like we're past that. I feel like you can bring someone on who's incredibly talented, who's flawed and human and who's made mistakes. And I think at the end of the day, most people now are ready for a lot of these people to come back and do the things that they were really
Spacey was abused himself, I believe, so he just kept the tradition alive. That is disgusting, but also hilarious.
good at doing. And most people are adults and they understand that like people contain multitudes. And if someone is not acting in a criminal manner,
Bro's dressed like a failed Jonah Hill impersonator in a stock image tulip field. He's peacocking.
then I think you have to give that person the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I also think if you're going to be a fair democratic society, you've got to allow people to have a second chance, right? If they completely fuck up, whatever it may be, even people who've perhaps been convicted of crimes. I mean, I look at people.
Simp. Glaze. He's simping and glazing. He works at Krispy Kreme as a head glazer.
People, you know, like Mike Tyson, the boxer who went to prison for rape. Now, he always denied that he raped anybody, but he was convicted. But he's been allowed to
Nobody talks about Kobe. I've seen those Wikipedia pages. I've combed through the files.
be brought back by society. He is, you know, arguably as famous
Yeah, I mean, imagine having this drip versus the Arc'teryx Demon. North Face, what is this, 2004?
now as he's ever been, and certainly as busy work-wise. Why is it one rule for people like Mike and another rule for people like Kevin Spacey?
Because of aura, like if you want the truth, because Mike Tyson beat the shit out of people for a living.
seems that there's a very arbitrary court of public opinion, which is determining whether people are allowed back or not.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the time and the consensus and where people happen to be. I think people now have realized that that is exhausting. Being hyper judgmental all the time, asserting what a good and virtuous person you are at every moment.
That's why I'm evil. That's why I'm dark triad maxing. Machiavelli talks about this.
Is exhausting. It's a standard that no one can really live up to. And many of the people who are most vocal about, you know, banishing other people, they themselves would get in trouble soon after for something they had done.
Of course.
Because nobody is perfect. And like Warren Buffett, I think it was Warren Buffett.
I'm actually perfect.
Maybe I'm mistaken, but if you put a cop on anyone's tail for 2 miles, they're going to get a ticket. Like, I don't think anyone's entire life holds up under scrutiny. And, you know, we just have to, like, you know, look at it in a nuanced way. I think nuance is coming back. That's the hope.
Yeah.
And I think the black and white, with us or against us, Manichaean sense of people being either good or evil isn't true. Look at the Middle East conflict.
Dude, I wipe before I shit. I call it a primer.
It seems to me that you have very impassioned people on both sides of that conflict that feel very strongly about issues. And there are people that are very conflicted about it. And
There are people who don't care.
I don't think, that people that think one thing are necessarily evil or wrong or bad. I think that people are bringing their own life experience to it, their own set of values, and they're looking at it and they're trying to figure it out. I mean, especially a guy like me, an Irish Catholic guy who grew up on Long Island, who doesn't really.
Hey, yo. Timmy. All my respect has been earned back.
Know much about it and has been educating myself, watching shows like yours and others. And the questions of the world aren't always the easiest. Like, I don't think it's an easy.
Yeah, there's also a bullshit analogy before. Most people aren't heinous criminals. Hey, you put a cop on anyone's ass for 2 miles, they're getting a ticket. Really?
Easy question necessarily to go, how do you fix that problem that's been going on for 2,000 years?
Yeah, look, I'm an Irish Catholic too, and one of the best things I've read or seen about the whole Israel-Hamas war was by a Jewish journalist in the UK called Jonathan Friedland.
Called Douglas Murray. Imagine.
Who wrote a piece saying that he could construct a very good argument for why the Palestinians had the most right to feel aggrieved about the 75-year conflict, but also could write a separate piece about why Israelis could also justifiably claim to have the right to feel most aggrieved. And I thought that was one of the most interesting, nuanced.
Give that shit to the Vatican and have Baldwin the Fifth take over.
And smart takes on the whole thing, which is a bit like the troubles in Northern Ireland, which raged for many decades, is that, again, implacable people living very close to each other. And in the end, it actually took a fresh collection of people, Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, George Mitchell, and others, to look at that intractable problem and out of it forge a peace, which nobody thought could happen. But it did happen. And I suspect that in a few years' time, we will hopefully see the same thing.
Yeah, it's all just going to blow over. I think we'll be chilling in the next couple of years. I think we're going to come to an agreement that everybody likes. This sand is my sand. This sand is your sand.
In the Middle East, and we'll look back on it and wonder why things got so completely intractable in the way that they did. But that is the nature of life. But I do think you're right that nuance is the thing that's been missing from almost everything, whether it be warfare, the culture wars, the woke mindset, which always struck me as ironic because, like, if you're a liberal, the way that the woke left have behaved is very fascist.
Goddamn fucking woke mind virus. Get that shit out of here.
It's very telling people what they should find funny, what movies they're allowed to enjoy, what historical figures they can revere, what clothes they can.
Don't Catholics deny condoms or some weird shit? Yeah, they're really into cream pies. What sex is kind of for, like creating new life. But what do I know?
Wear without appropriating people, etc. It's a very fascist kind of outlook for people who would, if you ask them, say, the people I most oppose in the world are fascists.
Yes, well, it's a secular religion, just like a lot of the tenets of tech are a secular religion, just like you have a lot of people that are fundamentalist religious, whether they're Christian, Muslim, or Jewish.
I'm an evil slop accelerationist.
It's a fundamentalism where you don't allow any.
Didn't Catholics rape children and hide it? Yep, they did do that. Totally did that. It's pretty messed up.
Nuance. You don't allow a space to respectfully disagree. I don't want my friends to think the same way that I do about everything. That would be incredibly boring. I want to have people that disagree with me. I want to have friendships with people where I go, we don't agree on something, but we value each other as human beings because there are deeper human truths in life than politics. And that's everywhere across
No, there's not. I don't care about politics. Well, politics care about you.
every political spectrum. So to me, it's like, I think the most interesting things about life are not going to be who somebody voted for. That's not how you remember a human being. You're not going to stand
The podcastification of comedy has just ruined it in entirety.
up at a memorial and talk about who somebody voted for. You're most likely going to talk about the things they accomplished, the way they treated their friends, their family, things they like to do, their humor, their compassion. We've reduced everything to tribal mindset, and it seems to be, hopefully
Listen, if we're going full tribalism, consider me the fucking war chief. Just put me in charge.
now, starting to dissipate, where it's harder to know what side you're on.
The winning
Because
side.
you look at certain issues and you go, well, I'm this, and you look at certain issues and go, well, I feel like that. I think it's getting a lot murkier,
Empathy is a business expense. I don't feel, I just decide.
and people don't. And you see a
I
lot of
totally
fights on the
agree.
right now. Yeah,
But I like that. I actually find that quite healthy because I think it shows that people are, I see conservative commentators who might a few years ago have just blindly gone along with supporting their side come what may because they felt they were in a kind of war with the opposition, which wouldn't allow for any admission of going against your own side on something. And now they're much more prepared, I've noticed on social media, to come out and
All of my feelings are instincts or intuitions. I don't do emotions. All my thoughts come from blood dreams.
criticize their own side. And I want to cheer that and say that's exactly how it should be. You should be able to look at a set of facts, and if they change, say, actually, you know what? My side's got that wrong. It is intellectually honest to do that.
I think if you care about free speech, you have to be concerned with deporting people that attended protests that were critical of Israel. It doesn't mean you agree with everything those people said or any of it. It means that if those people have not committed a crime and you cannot show that they are financially supporting Hamas or in any tactical way, and they're out there speaking freely.
What's the 80-20 split on that decision? This is where I know where to align myself. Chat, what's the majority? Can we get some research on that? We're anti-deportation of people who are critical of Israel, obviously. Or are we pro-deportation of people who are critical of Israel? That's our greatest ally in the Middle East.
At a protest, writing op-eds, deporting them because they've been critical of a foreign government seems
I'm going with whoever pays me more.
to feed the conspiracy theories that the United States is acting and doing things at the behest of Israel. What you want to do, if you're creating a political culture, you want to try to prevent people from drifting to the extremes. That should be the whole point of creating any type of political culture, is to say there are lines that people aren't going to cross. They're not going to get into Holocaust denialism, or they're not going to go, on the other side into this crazy, let's banish everyone who disagrees with us and let's try to get them to lose their job and destroy their reputation and really do a ton of damage to people's lives. These extremes you want to prevent. And to me, what I see, there's a lot of long-term damage, not only to the relationship we have with Israel, but to
all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Tim Dillon back together again.
people's faith in our government to make decisions. If we start deporting people without any due process, putting them in a jail in El Salvador.
Whoa. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, duly processed, deported.
I think these are things that conservatives are saying, wait a minute, we've died on the hill of free speech. We can't support deporting people because they've been critical of our government or Israel. It's crazy. If they're legally here on a legal visa.
Right. What if they are, for argument's sake, openly supporting Hamas? which is a prescribed terror group in the United States. In that circumstance, because you got this guy, Mahmoud Khalil, who was the head of the protest group in Colombia, who was apparently distributing pro-Hamas literature and was there on a green card. Would that change your thinking about somebody like that?
Pierce, I've openly supported Hamas. It depends who you're having lunch with.
That's deflection. Answer the question.
Don't you want to just get through a lunch, Pierce? Do you want to fight everyone all the time? If I'm out to lunch with people from the Middle East, I'm not going to start a whole thing here. No, listen, the thing
I would. I don't give a fuck anymore. I actually would.
becomes what is Hamas literature? Is it like a brochure that says welcome to Hamas?
Yes.
Am I selling it to Hamas timeshare? What is he doing? He's walking around the quad at Columbia. I got to see this literature.
My opinion, all those fucking gay-ass protests, shut them down. Spending $90,000 a year for school, and there's a bunch of seed-oiled out twinks in my way. Please move away from me. Forever. Imagine Columbia University, Ivy League, supposed to be the pinnacle, the top of academia, right? In New York State, handing out vegan fucking sandwiches, soying out. Oh, we're gonna solve world peace.
That's supposedly Hamas. I had no idea Hamas was doing pamphlets, brochures. I didn't know. Do you go through a Hamas presentation? Do you show up to the lobby of a Marriott and they just get up and tell you?
And I don't even care what they're protesting. It could be a cause that I'm supporting. It's so performative and annoying. And I don't even leave my house. And I still get mad at them. The second I see tents and piercings and colored hair, I'm out. I'm literally out.
About the organization? I don't know. It seems flimsy.
You know why? You know why I'm against it? Because you take those same people, put them in the woods with the same tents, they're not making it out. No shot.
The language we're using to deport that guy seems flimsy to me unless you can make a real case that he was genuinely supporting Hamas in a tactical way that endangers residents of the United States of America. If he beat up a Jewish student, if he committed a crime, if he, all of these things. But if he's just voicing a very anti-Israel point of view, I think deporting him
Based Phil is the best. I agree.
Is going to feed the flames of a lot of people that think that we're doing things at the behest of Israel and that we're compromising our values to do it.
Well, we literally are. That's what the U.S. is doing. If you've been paying attention.
What do you make of Tariff Gate? I mean, I think most people seem to agree with Trump's overview that America has seen too much of a drain of its manufacturing outside of the U.S. But a lot of people question the blunt instrument weapon he's now unleashing with these tariffs. What do you feel about it?
I think the biggest two questions right now that are shaping politics around the world are the mass migration of people from one place to another and the economic devastation of the working class, not only in America,
True,
but in Europe, in the UK. I find these to be the two biggest issues, and they all have to do with immigration and trade. I'm not an economist. I think Trump's instincts about tariffs are largely correct, that the industrial base of the country has been hollowed out. The asset-owning class has made a lot of money over the past 30 years.
Every person that has soyed out about tariffs doesn't even have an impressive portfolio to begin with. They don't even have capital. They got nothing. Nothing to their name. No house, no mortgage, no bags, no stocks, no crypto, no gold, no drip. Nothing.
30 or 40 years, but people in the manufacturing sector have seen
no job, no swag, no sauce.
Prospects of their lives dwindle, and they're unable to live at a standard that you would want them to live. So I think that largely
We need more millionaire podcast comedians who toe the line of the left and the right. That's what we need. That's what we need.
he's correct about the problem. And I think renegotiating some of these trade deals is a good idea. But I also understand that this is a major economic shift. It's probably going to be an incredibly volatile period, and it may not work.
It's absolutely a class war. It is the slaves and it's the rich 1%. Well, I just watched a clip of Pokimane talk about how she's not rich. Listen, the second I climb through the fog of war on Twitch, it's game over. It's game over. I'm like a lion ready to pounce, to be unleashed into the gladiatorial arena.
Because we're very much down the road of the global economy. We are a very integrated economy, and unwinding that, is going to be, I think, difficult. But this is why the question really is, what is a country? What is a nation? Is it an economic zone? Is it a place for people to just make money? When England, has that
It's a melting pot. It's a nothing burger. It's everything and nothing at the same time.
Tax law, and a bunch of millionaires decide to leave and go live in Spain or other countries, it doesn't mean that I agree with that law, and it doesn't mean that I agree with high taxes. But what it does tell me is that there are people that don't see the United
What is a woman? What is a country? What is anything? Christ on a cross if you're not psyoped by the postmodern left. Well, bucko, let's start by cleaning your room. Chest up, shoulders back, lifting some weights, having some red meat. Cure up those autoimmune disorders.
Kingdom as their home. They see it as an economic opportunity. And if that changes, they get up and leave. Countries have unique histories and cultures.
This is why you need to run your life like an RPG video game. You need to be min-maxing everything, always optimizing.
And they have to be worth sacrificing for and dying for and struggling for. And if you see
Well, if you think it's what you identify as, then by golly, I mean, I'd transition too if I saw a cock like that.
everything is just an economic opportunity where you have a borderless world where people are loyal to a certain financial position over an actual country, I think that is a real interesting thing. I think that's the biggest issue right now in Europe. It's a massive issue in places like Scandinavia, and it's a big issue in America.
We need to open all of our borders. We need to accept all the illegal immigrants.
What does it mean to be a country? Not in a racist way, not in a nativist way, but what is the social contract between the citizens and the government? And are these places actual nations, or do they exist for a very wealthy group of people to just kind of pillage and further immiserate the lives of everybody else?
True.
I think that's such a really smart assessment. I completely
Tim Dillon based?
concur. You did a very amusing
Real talk, why is Tim Dillon qualified to speak on this? Because he's a fucking comedy marauder. He's a comedy assassin. He's one of Joe Rogan's top guys.
rant on this theme about the current state of the US and offshoring of American manufacturing, using the metaphor of Oompa Loompas, Willy Wonka and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't want to give too much away other than the Oompa Loompas didn't come out on top. But what was just for those who didn't hear it at the time, just explain that again, the way you deployed that metaphor.
I thought about the Willy Wonka as a great way to think about, because you have the most famous
I'm wonking my Willy?
factory in history is probably the chocolate factory from Willy Wonka. It's the thing that everyone can understand.
It's the slop factory here at Third Eye Global.
So if you had all these Oompa Loompas that had made chocolate forever, and there's many generations of them, and they're trained in that skill, they're artisanal chocolate makers, and this is what they do, and then the factory is sold to a multinational conglomerate that looks at the numbers and says, we can make a lot more money and drive up profits for our investors if we go to where labor costs are low. And so we've moved the chocolate factory to China, to Taiwan, to India, to Pakistan. And the Oompa Loompas are now in the gig economy. They're delivering DoorDash. They're at Panera. They're driving Ubers. Some of them are on fentanyl. They're not able to function. They're adopting pathological behavior. The chocolate factory itself is turned into a high-end condo because why not? And all the condos are sold for $20 or $40 million to the daughters of Chinese amusement park tycoons who go there a few months out of the year to do cocaine with the friends that they met in art school. And that might be, and that might be 4:30.
He's spitting. He's cooking. He's marinating. I know that I need to listen to him because he's saying things in rapid succession.
2 Park Avenue in Manhattan, or it might be 1 Hyde Park, and I love Knightsbridge. But when I stay at the Mandarin and I look at 1 Hyde
I wish Oompa Loompas were real so I'd have another thing I could fuck.
I see there's 2 lights on because most of those condos are just vertical money laundering.
Yeah.
They're stash boxes for a few $100 million. And every now and then
Oompa Loompas are adults, right? They're not children. Nah!
you'll just see a Saudi little prince go in his Lambo or something. But, we've turned these cities into Chinese ghost cities where people aren't even there. There's no school
A bunch of fent-maxing Oompas is diabolical.
bus pulling up outside of these condos where people are getting in. And
I need a thick midget who works at a chocolate factory to gawk my shit.
a lot of these billionaires are just purchasing these as investments under the names of LLCs. So the chocolate factory becomes a high-end condo, and then 3 blocks away you have the Oompa Loompas on fentanyl going, that was my life.
Saudi princes turning Instagram thoughts into log flumes.
Forever. And now I've been completely cast out. And then Charlie, who's now a multi-billionaire, is coming on your show, and he's talking about how important it is that we continue to support the Ukraine, which might be nice in theory, but he doesn't care at all about the Oompa Loompas. So we're all a little suspect about his newfound love for.
Do millionaire podcast comedians care about the average person? I need to know. Or is it performative? Is it mental gymnastics?
Absolutely brilliant.
Dude,
I have
of
to say,
course they do. Of course they do.
you are a genius, but you're interesting to
I don't.
me
Well,
because
stop it.
I know that you take. Well, no, you are. You're a comic genius, but you have a really serious news vein running through you, which I think makes you quite unusual. You've also interviewed a lot of people on your show. Who's been the most impressive person when you look back of all the
Curtis Yarvin, Mencius Moldbug, Peter Thiel.
the
I
guests
got to
you've
be
had?
honest. I have to be honest. We had a lot of people on. We had Steve Bannon on. I got calls from a ton of liberals who said to me, wait a minute. I feel like I just took acid. I said, why? They go, do I agree with Steve Bannon?
Is there a podcast comedian pyramid based on wealth? Hundo P.
They said, I turned on that episode and I wanted to turn it off and I couldn't. And they said, because here's a guy criticizing Elon Musk, criticizing tech,
Yeah.
talking about taxing billionaires, talking about the American middle class. We didn't hear a ton of that from the Democratic Party. And their mind kind of melted. And I found that to be a very interesting interview because a lot of people that were conditioned to think this guy was a neo-Nazi or a, white nationalist were like, Steve Bannon was one of the only people who said, why are there not more black and Spanish people in tech? This is a Steve Bannon quote. That's not an AOC quote, by the way. It's a Steve Bannon.
No, base Steve Bannon? So I call him Base Bannon. Dude, real ones know about Steve Bannon's war room.
And it's just very interesting because I think it is very odd when you have an entire media go, you cannot listen to someone. And then when that person speaks and you hear them and you go, well, I don't agree with everything they're saying, but I will tell you this. They don't sound like a crazy person I shouldn't listen to. He's not talking about flat Earth. He's not talking about JFK Jr. coming back from the dead. He's talking about issues the Democratic Party.
This must be late night TV in the States, no? I'm pretty sure this is just glorified YouTube slop at this point. The slopification of our society and media specifically has reached levels unbeknownst to mankind. So this is it's got the high production value and shit, but at the end of the day, it's just slop. It's all it's ever gonna be.
talked about in the early 90s when they won.
Bro, Piers Morgan was just plugging beef tallow sunscreen that was started on Esoteric Health Twitter. It's a joke.
Yeah, I interviewed Banner myself recently, and then I did the Bill Maher show, and he was on that as well last week. And I completely agree with you. And it's interesting because Bill Maher talked in that show about going to have dinner with Trump, and he predicted to me before it even aired. He said, I'm going to get hammered by my side for this.
It's me, Big Dick Bill Maher, the pizza guy.
I can already feel it. Because he'd announced he was going to do it, announced he was going to talk about it.
I smoke weed. I'm just like Snoop Dogg.
And sure enough, he did get hammered by so many people who like his show and identify as liberals. And again, it comes back.
The only hammer Bill Maher got is the one between his legs, am I right? It's me, Big Dick Bill.
To this, what is wrong with going to sit down at the White House with the President of the United States, even if you have attacked him and criticized him and don't agree with him about a number of things, but you also agree with him about a lot of stuff too, as Bill Maher now does, whether it's immigration or the woke left and their madness and so on. But the idea that he has to become vilified by fellow liberals.
Why does Tim Dillon look like a South Park character?
For doing that, I just find so depressing.
I think people...
Bill Maher's got an affinity for the last name Trump. Am I right, chat? First it was Tiana. Now it's old Donald. He can't escape it.
Are still holding on to the idea that the way to defeat Trump is to completely ignore his appeal. They don't want to give him an inch. They don't want to concede that he's been right about things. They don't want to concede that
what he's describing is actually pretty true.
He
no
does
glaze.
Have his finger on the pulse of certain hot button issues that the American people, like it or not, have kind of rendered a verdict on. They don't want to concede any of that. I think there's a deep fear that if you admit he's right about one thing...
Tim Dillon looks like Matt Stone and Trey Parker sculpted him out of clay.
Then he's going to take that and run with it, and that you'll have to then concede all his other points, which I don't think is true. I think you can do what I've literally just done, where I say, I disagree here, I agree here. But I have a lot of very smart friends that realize, and they're in that, kind of machine, and they realize that isn't working. A lot of them are in the media, and I did an interview with CNN yesterday, and we sat down for an hour, and then they said, we're going to edit it and put it out. I said, why don't you just put it out? Maybe put out a small clip of it on the internet, but put out the full hour. I had a great discussion with this woman, Elle Reeves, who's a great journalist. And I mean,
wait a second. That journalist follows me on Twitter. Let's pull this up. Yeah, look at that. Follows me. Correspondent for CNN. Dude, I talked to this woman on the phone. I gotta start charging these fucking journalists, bro. They want my third eye intuition and insight. This shit's not free. Pay up now.
She does all these Vice things and stuff. I'm sure people dislike her. But for me, I thought she conducted a very fair interview, and we had some very good exchanges. And I said, well, why in God's name would we? And of course, they're asking, well, why is Joe Rogan so popular? I said, well, number one, he's not editing his interviews. He's putting out a full interview.
Yes.
Why would you edit an interview? Yeah. I sat here for an hour, and there's points that people are going to go, I don't think this guy's right. And then there's points where people are going to go, she's right. And then there's points where people are going to go, the hell with both of them, but put it out. And I think that's
what. So isn't that why?
Dude, I should have told her to tell CNN to do their job.
Still trying.
Tim, don't you think it's why? Yeah. But don't you think it's why shows like yours are getting so popular? Why my shows become really popular? Why Rogan's so popular? Why? Because I think young people in particular, they're just done with feeling like everything's getting cut, edited, censored by a conventional media, which doesn't seem to really understand the power of just putting stuff out and letting people make their own minds up. In other words, by the
Pierce, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I mean, here at Third Eye Global, we keep it schizo. We keep it raw. We keep it uncut.
editing process, you are deciding
Why would you edit? What are you, gay? Clip it and ship it, baby.
people should see, what they should hear. You know, they slash a 1 hour interview with you to a 10-minute interview. You have no control over
We keep it uncircumcised over on these parts.
what side of you is going to be put out there. And there's no more rounded view of Tim Dillon. There's just going to be what CNN or whoever it is decides the public should see of you. Whereas what I would much rather do is what we've done here, which is just have a chat for an hour, put it all out, and people,
Two blokes in it, having a chat.
like you say, they can hear stuff they agree with, stuff they don't agree with, but they get a much more rounded sense of who you really are. A bit like Steve Bannon when he did your show or did mine.
Right.
I completely agree with you. He was
The people, they want the schizo, they want the base takes, and I'm going to give it to them, folks. That's right.
a very
I think they
surprising
want-
guy to interview.
Yeah.
I found myself agreeing
Yeah.
with a lot more than I thought.
I think they want to put people in boxes and they want you to play a role and they want you to be a character.
Yes.
Because they've arranged the world in a way that they need people to fill a slot. They need this person to be the right-wing person. They need this person to be the left-wing person. They won't allow nuance. It's terrible for their business model. They've made people incredibly stupid, incredibly paranoid. This is cable news all over the place, by the way, Jeff, because they've amputated these discussions and they've cut them down, and they've not let anyone appear like a human being. They've made them into this talking head. And I'm not saying you have to give everyone hours and hours and hours, but you have to let people present a part of themselves that's unedited. You'll have a show where 3 or 4 people come on.
True.
They have a spirited disagreement. You're not editing what they say. You're allowing them to speak.
No.
You know, I watch. You have Candace or Dave Smith or Batya or any of these people or Cenk or any of these guys come on. They say their piece. And so I'm hoping they release it in full, and maybe they will. But that's the failure of the traditional media model, is that editors go in the back.
This is just the illusion of choice. Pick your favorite talking head. Pick your favorite millionaire podcaster.
And they decide what they want the interview to be, what they want you to be in the interview. And I hope they release the full thing, because it's actually a really, really good discussion. But it's not, it might not fit the agenda that they're trying to push.
Yes. Which they shouldn't feel the need to do, because younger people don't want to have an agenda forced on them. They want to make their own minds
Well,
up.
I showed
That's
up.
the
You know,
power
she
of
said you
releasing
showed up.
stuff. Yeah.
She said a lot of people wouldn't come and talk to CNN
I always come.
because they think that CNN is dishonest. And I
It
said,
is.
well, no, I showed up because I'm going to sit here and do an interview. And then after that, they go, now we go edit it.
You have, Tim, you have a great friendship with RFK Jr. I've interviewed him many times, actually, on Uncensored. I really like him. You do a brilliant impression of him, which I would love you to do a little taste of.
Yeah, can we hear you make fun of the guy's throat condition where he sounds like he swallowed razor blades? That'd be great.
And then,
The fat cams are coming back.
let's just have a little burst of your RFK.
Well, he's a very authentic guy. And like I think I told him once I was eating oatmeal because I said, I think that's healthy. And then he goes, the instant oatmeal has glyphosate in it, and it's actually not healthy because the pesticides that it's grown. So but he's an authentic guy. He's an authentic guy.
Tim Dillon always does this. Whenever he's about to make fun of somebody, he always prefaces it by saying something he likes about them. You know, he's a great guy, but he's also gay. Trust me. You watch enough Tim Dillon, you'll start to pick up on it.
I liked him immediately when I met him. I found him to be very authentic. I think he's got a good family. I think his wife is great. I'm not a scientist. I don't know if he's right about everything, but I know he's telling you exactly what he thinks. And I know that if that's half of the battle, in trying to figure out what the truth of something is you got to be having good faith arguments. You got to be dealing with people, and you can't have people lying and misrepresenting their views. And no one's accusing him of that. What's interesting is, like, you know, he's coming out and authentically saying he's said the same thing for 20 or 30 years. He was a liberal hero for a long time because he
Cleaned up the Hudson.
went after polluters. He was a guy that went after polluters. And then he's now
He should go after Bangladesh. He should go after India. He should go after China. Hello? Is this the base department?
talking about public health, and people are very uncomfortable. I don't agree with everything either. I think it's like, you know, he's going after paupers or whatever. It's like,
It's a very effective way of communicating. People do that naturally to sandwich in their jabs and opinions. Both statements are true, usually. Yeah, but I just clocked it like a fucking cop with a radar gun. It's not effective if it doesn't get past the third eye, now is it? This is why it's important to be a true schizo. Just say it. Just do the impression.
because they're taking poppers. But, you know, it's like, or when they say that, like, Steak and Shake is now doing beef tallow on the fries, it's like, I think we need to invade Steak and Shake with the military and shut it down. I don't think we need half measures in this country. I should be let out of McDonald's at gunpoint. So if he gets more radical, I would be.
What's wrong with a good old-fashioned burger and fries? What are we talking about here? Dude, the macros on the McDonald's quarter pounder are cracked. Let's get to the root of the problem, please.
happy. Half measures are not going to do it. In America, we need to close this down. There should be military at the supermarkets. You should get a.
But how come I can eat Chick-fil-A and be fine, but fat people aren't? That sounds like a skill issue.
Prove to buy things. I mean, I think that's what we need to start doing. It needs to get very extreme. But listen, I think he's a really interesting American. He's had an American life. The guy kicked a heroin addiction. He's, you know.
Glaze, top glazer, Krispy Kreme.
He's an interesting guy. So, I mean, people tend to really not like him. And, you know, listen, people are well within their rights to disagree with him, but everything he is saying, he deeply believes. And, you know, was it the best idea to have these 18-year-old kids being vaccinated 3 times for this thing? It had an incredibly low death rate? Probably not. But nobody.
What is in my arm? Fauci! Please!
Wants to, you know? But it doesn't mean that maybe.
But what was interesting, I thought, was he. Yeah, he was characterized as a sort of as an implacable anti-vaxxer, and yet one of the first things I heard him do in his new job was to urge people to have the measles vaccine, for example. So I do think he's another one where people have been led down a certain thought process about what his views actually are, and some of them are contention.
Dr. Fauci, give us vaccines.
This is no question. But broadly speaking, there was a lot of mythology about what he actually stands for.
Well, I think, again, people don't want to give anyone an inch. This is the problem. They don't want to say that he has made some.
I'll give you an inch, maybe 2, if you're lucky.
Good points. They won't. I mean, these are people that it was left-wing to question corporations. It was left-wing to talk about poison in the food. It was left-wing to talk about big pharma.
But the fact that he associated himself with Orange Caesar, he must be excommunicated. He must be gobbled up. Nom, 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 nom. You have been devoured by the leftist Ouroboros.
And the amount of power they have. These were left-wing ideals years ago. This was not right-wing. They became right-wing, you know, during COVID and then after COVID, but they were always left-wing. It was left-wing to question the war machine or the CIA or the FBI or the national security state. Those are now right-wing positions. The left-wing positions are very status quo positions. They are pro-foreign intervention. And by the way, there's merits to debating all these things, but now it is the Democratic Party that is far more likely to tell you that things in America are okay. You should stop complaining. That the, you know, financial sector is the stock market is the most important thing, that pharma should be trusted, and that we should be in other countries intervening. And that was all truly corporate right-wing propaganda 8-10 years ago. And now it is the positions of the
That's because the Overton window has shifted. Real ones know.
Democratic Party, because I think they just got in the room with some very wealthy people that said, we're going to fund the hell out of you if you leave us alone. And we need you to go after social issues and tell people that we're going to have a trans Batman, but stop with the healthcare, stop with the economic justice, stop criticizing corporations. And then identity politics was invented as a great way to distract people from the idea that the economic realities of their lives were steadily getting worse. But you could pretend to be progressive because you were going to say that Nike has a
She'll avert on my window till I shift.
CEO that's a person of color.
Elizabeth Warren speaks of this.
Or the Chase Manhattan Bank was going to evict you, but they were going to get your pronouns correct while you were being dragged out of your house.
Pronouns are just such a non-thing. What we learned about this the other week. I need a Jimmy Neutron brain blast. What is this called? Social constructionism? Is that it? I'm thinking. It's 100% of that's exactly what it is. It's social constructionism gone amok. It was not a problem, but we made it a problem, and now it's a problem for everyone. And now I must abide, or I lose my job.
Tim Dillon, you are a voice of common sense. I loved your special.
Social construction. Social construct. It's difficult for me to get this word out. It's too many syllables. Constructivism. Social constructivism.
Tim Dillon, I'm Your Mother. It's been on Netflix since the 15th. I urge everyone to go and watch it. It's laugh out loud funny, but it's also got some great moments of seriousness. It makes some great points. I profoundly enjoyed it, and I love interviewing you. I think you're a refreshing voice of nuanced common sense in a world of
thank you so
partisan
much. And the
hysteria.
next time you're in LA, the next time you're in LA, I want you to let me know. We're gonna go and join the volunteer fire department.
You know what? I'd happily do that.
Yeah.
I actually have a house. I'm in LA now. I have a house here.
Lovely.
And actually,
I'm in New York, but I'm coming to
LA.
London in this. Yeah. I'm coming to London in the spring. It's one of my favorite cities. I think it is such a great city. And I root for...
I can't believe we just sat through 50 minutes of small talk. And just like that. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Pierce. This is where we part ways, boys. Where are we dropping next?